All right, chapter 11 is on two sample tests. First one I call my 2P test. This is for two proportions. You've got two different groups and you're comparing the proportions of two different groups.
Two different what groups?
What?
Two different what groups?
Two different groups.
Okay.
Now, ideally, you want them to be, they should be independent. There's only one time, 11.2 is when we want independent. Independent is a default, like what we want. Simple random sample, of course, is a default, what we want. These are things that are standard in most things. Your requirements here, we're gonna have two groups, so we're gonna have a P1 and a P2. A proportion for each group. That leads to our requirements. Previously, when we did the one proportion test in 10.2, and we talked about this formula earlier, we had n times p times 1 minus p is greater than or equal to 10. Now we want that to apply to both groups. N times p1 times 1 minus p1 needs to be greater than or equal to 10, and n times p2 times 1 minus p2 needs to be greater than or equal to 10. Just like we had n was less than or equal to 0.05 big N, we want that same thing for our two different groups here. We're still doing shit in StatCrunch. We're still going for proportions. We're going to stats and proportion stats. But now we've got two samples, so we're going to say two samples. We still have the option of with data, with summary. You know, the power sample size. I'm gonna tell you right now, I was skimming the fucking stuff to pick problems for the other class, and I saw that they fucking wasted time with a lot of fucking questions in these later chapters. Like even go over shit I didn't teach back in chapter 1, like what match pair design is and case cohort and a bunch of fucking terminology. When you see it, when you see questions, you go, we didn't cover that. Don't waste your time looking it up. Just pick one that's like seems reasonable. If you get it wrong, you get it wrong. I'm gonna go through and rescale like all the problems. I'm gonna give credit on a bunch of the problems at the end of the semester. I'm going through the questions this weekend going, how many of these are fucking terrible? I didn't have time before the semester started. It was 2 days and I didn't realize they fucked me. That's what they did. They fucked. They put a lot of bullshit in. They even have power sample size questions in here. I'm not gonna cover that because it's like, it's the same shit. It should be the same for doing two samples. They might have you do the target proportions for both groups. I haven't done it yet. I don't think it's important. The idea is how do all these hypothesis tests work? So, how do they work? We know our 5 steps. I told you the thing that changes is H naught and HA. So how does H naught and HA change? H naught, a common way that we would write it would be like P1 equals P2 And then P1 like doesn't equal is less than or greater than P2. That's not what StatCrunch does, because StatCrunch likes to do you dirty. What they did is they subtracted P2 from the right and put it on the left. So now it's P1 minus P2. Not equal, less than, or greater than 0. The things that you can edit are this symbol right here and this value right here, which automatically translates over there. You should leave that 0 alone. This is designed for like if you're really doing some statistical work and you want to say like one group's proportion not only is like different, but like how different. The only one you really need to worry about though is this symbol right here. But depending on how I choose P1 and P2, less than and greater than mean two different things. So for two groups, this is mandatory. Two groups, you have to, you must label the groups 1 and 2. You got to identify them, and you kind of like, depending on how the question's wording, one thing makes sense more than another. I recommend, like when you're doing the problem on homework, like say P1, group 1, like let's say it's men. It's the men group. Then write down what X1 and N1 are. Write them down. Pull the information out of the paragraphs and write them down because you're going to need them in StatCrunch. Write this stuff down. I said men and women here because that makes a natural, easy two-group thing that I can set up or talk about, but it doesn't have to be. It could be any two different things. Trucks versus automobiles, all sorts of things. And if you want to see why we don't want to do this by hand, pull out that stats formula cheat sheet thing I handed out. Just look at the formulas in chapter 11. Look at the fucking how you calculate the test statistic with this. It's you're gonna be like, nope, that's a fucking hard pass. And it's that one. You had the right one.
All right.
Yeah, find chapter 11 on it. It's like the second page or third page. Shit, I guess I can pull it out myself.
Oh, wow.
Right? You're like, nah, that's a fucking hard pass.
Which one is it, this one?
Yeah,
Bro, that doesn't even make sense.
right? Not fun with that.
We have to do it in person, or we have
I ain't gonna fucking, no, we're not doing it by hand. No. This is for the crackheads that say, let's do it by hand. Look at that shit. P1 minus P2 minus parentheses P1 minus P2 over the square root of P times 1 minus P times the square root of 1 over n plus 1 plus 1 over n plus 2. And they give us p hat, because p hat's in the formula, we got to do a fucking full-blown formula for it. All these are fucking shitty. Look at the 1 for 2 means. No. No. I ain't doing that shit by hand. Fuck all that.
Yesterday I was like, because I didn't realize, like, I was like confused on how to use stack bench for one of the old assignments. And I was like doing it by hand on a calculator, and it took me like 10 minutes just for one part of the equation. I was like, dividing, I had to like count all the decimals, like I had to like include all the decimals. I wanted to get it right, and I had to like.
It makes you want to hurt yourself, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was like,
No way! I had to do stats by hand. I don't even remember how, I feel like it's blocked out. I feel like it was, I don't have computer, we didn't have, well, I grew up with computers, yes. But we didn't have computers in the classroom, there was no computerized stats courses. I remember doing probability, and I remember doing standard deviation and shit like that. I don't remember doing the rest of this class, so that was like in the trauma zone and fucking like blocked out. I got an A, so whatever I did, I put in the time. But, so like label the groups, do shit like that, and that's gonna make everything easier. If you take your time when you're doing the homework, be patient, label shit, it gets easier. Let's go over an example. This is where you get to hear me try to say the word rural. Ah, it came out all right. So an economist believes that the percentage of urban households with internet access is greater than the percentage of rural. Which I'm gonna just start calling country because I sound like a moron when I say rural. It just fucking doesn't sound right. They're country houses. Percentage of country households with internet. It's gonna take a while for y'all to write down the problem. I realize this. I'm just putting down the information. So he obtains a random sample of 800 homes. (800 urban homes). And finds 338 have access. He gets 750 country homes with 292 having access. Test the claim at alpha equals 0.05 level of significance. like they're done writing. So, we have two groups. We should label them. This is how I choose labeling. I don't know if you guys are of a like mind, you'll see for this side. We're trying to find out if urban households have a greater percentage than rural country. See, fuck, it just sounds fucking wrong. I can write it though. Urban is greater than rural. I fucking did it again, said it out loud. That makes sense to me the way it's listed. These two things are identical. Rural is less than urban. But reading this one, country is less than urban, in my head does not mean the same thing as urban is greater than country. Mathematically, it's identical. In my head, it sounds wrong. It says urban greater than country. I like doing greater than symbol. It just makes more sense to me. So I always tend to pick the groups so that the one on the left is the greater one. You can do it however you want, so long as you label them. I'm going to label group 1 urban and group 2 rural. Which means my X1 is the urban one is 338 out of 800. X2 will be the country ones. That's 292 out of 750. By doing them this way, I have picked urban is my 1, this is my 2. H naught is P1 minus P2 equals 0. And HA is P1 minus P2 is greater than 0. If you choose the other order, you got to change which groups you enter the information in, you got to use the other sign. So if you went rural, if you went country as group 1, you got to use the less than sign, because otherwise you're not going to get the right answer.
So urban is ho, and then rural is hop.
No. H naught and HA are not two different groups, so they're two different hypotheses.
Oh.
The groups are P1 and P2. P1 is urban, P2 is country.
Oh, okay.
That confuses a lot of students. I'm glad you asked it out loud. I see it a lot on tests, and I'm like, where did you get this? Now I get it. I hear it when you say it, like, it makes sense. You're like, let's put one with group and the other. That's not how it is.
Because when you see the greater than symbol in rural is on the right side, I'm thinking the bottom part, HA, is rural.
Right, but that's not how these two samples work.
Yeah,
I'm going to cross out that one because I don't want to confuse later on when you're looking at this later on. You know what? But
no, but that's kind of helpful though to see.
the rural.
Yeah, so you crossed it for no reason.
Well, you saw it. It was enough there. You heard the explanation.
Yeah.
If we want to look at it, what happens if we do that? We can't. In fact, it's worth doing. Our alpha is 0.05. And so we need our test stat and our p-value. We're going to go find it.
Or T-stat.
What?
Or T-stat.
The name, it's a test stat.
Oh.
The name of it is not really important unless you're like making a paper. I am not gonna tell you what the test, it's not, it shouldn't say T-stat, it probably says Z-stat here. I won't tell you the name of the stat, because I've seen, some of them, it really like, when we get to like 12 and 13, it really narrows down which test it is. And the idea is for you to read the problem and go, what one makes sense there? Not like hack the data, hack the answer key and outsmart the teacher. There's enough ways to do that already, and I'll cover some of them on the test. All right, let's go take a look. I'll do it both ways with the group 1 and group 2. So we are going to do stats, proportion stats, 2 sample with summary. I said group 1 was the 338 out of 800, and the group 2 was 292 out of 750. And I want this one to be greater than. And we get our z-stat and our p-value. I'm going to show you what happens real quick while I have it up, what happens if we put them in the other order. If I say this is the 292 out of 750, oop, that's not the right number. And this is the 338 out of 800. It's 338 out of 800, right? If I try to do the greater than here, which would be wrong, this is saying country is greater than urban.
Wait, wouldn't sample 2 be 292?
Did I not have that? No, I did that over here. Sample 2 is 292. All right. That's what I had. I'm showing both ways.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
is it the same either way you do it?
No, that's what I'm showing. I'm trying to point out why you gotta label this shit and be clear.
Okay, so that's the right way, the other way's the wrong way.
This is the right way. This is the z-stat and the p-value I'm gonna write down. But let's look at the differences here. I've just changed the order. If I use the same symbol, this one doesn't match up. This one says the wrong thing. And I can click compute on both. One is the right p-value of 0.092. And the one that is wrong is this one right here. The z-stat actually has the exact opposite sign. It's negative. Now, this is the one where they're in the wrong order right here. This is the rural on top.
You get the level by taking, like by subtracting the alpha by 1.
What?
Do you get the level by subtracting alpha by 1? Versus level?
Close. We're not like the confidence interval part.
Yeah. Do you have to put that in, or is that?
No, we don't need to do that. I was just doing that to show how they compare. Now, if I put them in the right order, this is where the thing I just crossed out, rural is less than urban. Wow, that came out right. If I put less than correctly, check what happens. I get the same p-value and the same z-stat. So if you put everything in the right order and you label them correctly so that you have the right symbol, this one I had greater than, this one I had less than, you're going to get the same results. But if you put the wrong one, we had 0.908, which is way, like 10 times larger than 0.092. So order very much matters. You gotta label them. The labeling we had for the way we wrote it, for what we're doing right here, we've got our test stat is 1.33 to 2 decimal places, and my p-value is 0.092. So when I compare these, to help you speed up the comparison, some people do it quick, some people I'm not confident which one's larger. If you're in that category where you're like, I can't quickly identify it, do this. Go one digit at a time. The first digits match, I'm not gonna work with them. Keep going until the digits don't match. Here, the digits don't match. I've got a 9 here, I've got a 5 here. 9 is larger than 5, so 0.092 is larger than 0.05. That's to help you like speed up the comparison. Like if you're not competent rounding, that's how you do it, 1 decimal at a time. So what does this tell me?
Too high.
It's too high or not too low, basically.
Oh yeah, not too low, do not support hub. Or, yeah, right?
Yeah, not too low. Do not reject H0.
Oh, do not reject hub.
Do not support HA. DNR is do not reject. Did I cover that with you guys? I use shorthand at some point here. DNR, I know means do not resuscitate in the rest of the world. In my class, it means do not reject. And DNS means do not support. Because you will get fucking tired of writing do not, do not, do not, do not, do not. You're like, no, I fucking get it. How quickly can I go? And we finish it off, we don't support HA. HA was, urban was greater than rural. There is not enough evidence to support the claim that a higher percentage of homes, higher percent of urban homes over rural homes have access to internet. There, I paraphrased what was going on in the question. This is a perfectly acceptable way to answer on the final. I didn't write step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5, but they all are there. If you get to the point where you're like, I don't want to number them anymore, and you're comfortable doing it, don't number them. As long as you have what I need, you're good. You guys ready? I want to make sure, I want to make clear, you don't need to put this, but you should. You should write this down on the test. If you do this, if you like do the show the comparison of p-value and alpha, and your paragraph down below doesn't match up with what you set up here, I don't know where your knowledge is incomplete. So I'm going to mark you down more. But if you do this here, you write this correct here, then you say like there is enough evidence, I know where like I will take off less. So if these don't match, and I don't see like what your reasoning is here, I'm taking off more. So it's always good to write down that reasoning. Reject or do not reject. Support or do not support.
I'm kind of confused, like, paragraph, so it's like, you say that there's like not enough evidence, basically, if it's, what, like, if p-value is greater than the alpha and that like, kind of just summarize some of the data with your paragraphs?
So when we're, like the confidence interval, we're inside that, when we're not rejecting and we're not supporting HA, the H naught is in the value of reasonable ranges. It's probably different than the actual value we got. Like P1 minus P2 is definitely not 0. But they're close enough, like there is a difference between the proportions here. But they're close enough that maybe if I did a different sample, this would turn out a different way. That's the idea here. So like, but when it's too far apart, when H naught is too far away from the actually what we have present in our samples, then it's like H naught doesn't seem reasonable anymore. Like I told you, the average income was 10,000 in Tulare. It shouldn't take you too long to call bullshit. Sure, it was probably 10,000, you know, fucking 1950, 1960, but that's clearly some fucking old information. If I told you it was 45,000, you might be like, I don't know. I gotta really look. So the idea is if H naught is too far outside the range of what we're getting, I don't know where like 45,000 would fall if I said that's the average income in Tulare right now. Pandemic and fucking rising minimum salary rates over the last few years has drastically changed that average household income. Does that kind of help clear up your question, Gianluca?
Yeah. Will it be, because I don't know, I like, will it be like, will I be able to see later when I'm doing the homework? Will it be, well, like, kind of hard. Like, will there be examples kind of in like the videos of how to like form the paragraphs? A little more like,
What do you mean form the paragraph? Like what I concluded here? Okay, so now I get what your question is. How am I going from up here to this conclusion here with that? That's the question, right? Okay, so what we have here is we concluded we are not supporting HA. This is before I get to the paragraph. You have to go back up and look and go, what was HA? HA here was P1 was greater than P2. Urban was greater than rural. I'm sorry, urban internet access, to be more specific, was greater than rural internet access. In fact, if you specify that a little bit better up above, I was trying to be a little chintzy, you know, write as little as I could when I wrote urban greater than rural. But maybe if I put percent of urban internet access versus percent of internet or rural internet access, then when I go back and look at it later on, I can see this is my HA. This is the one we aren't supporting. We don't support it for one reason. There wasn't enough evidence in the data. If it helps you, and this will very much help you on the final exam, many of the questions are worded such that I can come up here and I can just fucking plagiarize the shit out of the paragraph. I could say this is, there is not enough evidence to support the claim that, and I am literally just gonna come here and I'm gonna fucking hijack this entire fucking sentence. and literally copy it down word for word.
You can do that?
I don't have a problem with that. That the percentage of, so I only have so much room, so on screen, I gotta make sure both show, but you have the other part written above. I'm literally copying what I had written above. That the percentage of urban households, I fucked up households, with internet access is greater than the percentage of rural households with internet access. This entire 2/3 of the sentence, 3/4 of the sentence, copied word for word from the question. Sometimes the question isn't written very well where you can hijack it like that. And so, but try. If you like hijack and go, will this make sense if I, like, say it out loud. Don't write it first, just say it out loud, go, does that fucking make sense? And go, okay, if it fucking sounds like the words go together in the correct order, go for it. This is perfectly valid. In fact, when I do the practice final, that's what I'm gonna do. You are better off hijacking it word for word if you can. Because then you're not confusing, you're not making any like weird statements, something that makes the teacher go, I don't know if fucking Kiara knows what the hell she's talking about. Right? I get some funky phrased shit where it's like, I don't even know what they're saying sometimes. I'm like, I don't even know, what the hell does that even mean? I swear to God, I've seen someone reference like the fucking equinox and shit like that. Like, what? Like, completely obscure, bizarre shit. Like, what? How does this mean anything in stats? Did you just like go through the stats book and like start picking out big fucking words and go, that looks like I should use it here? I see this on tests. Especially like for when the class is online and they're having an online take home. That's where I like, they don't pay attention, they don't watch my video where I show them how to do the test. And I get the fucking bizarre shit. I will give them the test stat and p-value and they will go through and fucking do it again and sometimes do it wrong and get the wrong shit. So now they're referencing completely wrong shit. What? I gave you the goddamn information, you were... Don't do that, just use what you got. Is that a better answer, John Luca?
Yeah.
It's a little clearer, right? You gotta go up and you gotta look to see if you're trying to say, is there enough evidence to, like, that's what we're doing, we're collecting evidence. The researcher thinks urban households have better internet access than country households. That makes sense to me. The further away you live from the city, the fucking less internet connecting lines there generally is. It makes sense to me. So like, I can get why he thinks that. So what, we gotta go check it. Well, we don't. He went and checked it. And he found that there wasn't really enough evidence to support his theory. All right, you ready for more? 11.2. I'm going to kind of discuss 11.2 and 11.3 at the same time. Because 11.2 and 11.3 are both two means tests. Two sample mean tests. (11.2) is called the paired test. Paired means. 11.3 is just a two means test. The 11.3 is like the easier one to show, because it looks very much like our two proportion tests. H naught is mu1 minus mu2 equals 0. And HA is, it's not. It's either not equal, it's less than, or it's greater than. For the two mu test, the 11.3, you can have data or sample, or summary, sorry. Both are okay. N1 can equal N2, but it doesn't have to. I know I'm a little bit neurotic. If I did that last problem and I was fucking asking urban households and fucking country households, I'd ask the same goddamn number. It would drive me fucking crazy asking 800 one and 750 the other. I'd ask the same number. That's me. These must, the two mu tests must be independent samples. And of course, we're still going with simple random, shit like that. We still want n greater than or equal to 30 for both groups. That's how we did it for one test. We wanted it for one group. Now we want n greater than 30 for both groups. Ideally. You want that whole no outliers bullshit. Every rule that we set for one mu applies to two mu. Just like the proportions did. All those the two equations we checked for the two proportions, the n times p times 1 minus p, we just upscaled it from one sample to two samples by doing two equations. Here you're doing the same thing here. The only difference between these two things, they both have two groups, you're both checking a means, is that in the paired means test, the data has to be paired together. Which means the groups have to be dependent. One of the questions in 11.2 when you're doing it, and in fact, if you watch the video I did for 321 that will be uploaded tonight, is on, are sons taller than their fathers? I could do John Luca with his dad and Matteo with his dad. But if I try to pair up John Luca with Matteo's dad, that doesn't make any fucking sense. They're not related. There's no dependency there. So like you want some form of dependency. Common forms are before and after works well. Like it can be the same subject, but before and after something happens. You can have married couples. Siblings is a common one. Or, you know, some sort of family connection. But there has to be a relationship. And since, like if we're doing sons and their dads, if I have John Luca's height and his dad's height and Matteo's height and his dad's height, if I start averaging shit, I lose that connection. So We can't have summary data. You must have the data. To keep the dependency. To keep the pair going on. It's called paired data. To keep it paired, you gotta have it. And this kind of also, as a side effect, forces N1 to be the same size as N2. That's a must requirement there. But on the regular means test, it's not. So, when you're taking the final exam, and you have something that references means, and there's two groups, if it gives you data and they're the same size, it could be either one of them. It could be this one, it could be the pair one. You gotta look to go, is there a connection between these? If they're not the same size, if there's a table of data and there's different sizes, it can't possibly be paired. I can't have 15 sons and 10 dads. Well, I guess I could. You know, like two kids for one parent, but that, we wouldn't do it that way. We would write the parent down again. We'd list the parent again. So like, that's how you keep the pair thing going. The sample sizes have to be the same. They will write mu d for over here. H naught is mu d equals 0. D is for difference. It's the difference in the pairs. And then HA is going to be mu D is obviously the not equals, the less than, or greater than 0. You still need to identify mu D. Mu D is still mu group 1 minus group 2. So you have to still label them. Problem number 4 and 11.2 is on the sons and fathers thing. I'm not going to do it in class if you want it, because we want to get done before 5. If you want to see it though, it's going to be on the video tonight. Like, you can look at the problem walk through with the other class. In fact, I recommend skimming and looking at the homework problems when you're doing the homework for those sections, because I did chapter 10 and chapter 11 today with them. I just picked like a problem from each second. I didn't do a problem from 11.1, but I did the other 4 sections. And you can just get to the homework problem and go, what was he working on? Okay, I can see what he's doing. All right, let's do some examples of these. So you guys all ready? Find a good problem. So, example, an amusement park manager feels that the amount of time people wait in line is too long. People wait in line for a roller coaster is too long. He wants to see if a new loading, unloading procedure speeds up the line. procedure, that's an R, speeds up the line. He takes data from 7 days before and after the new process. And he measures how long to wait. He measures wait time. And I will give you a column of these results. Making a long list of data. He did 7 days, but some days he did different times, like on weekend days, he checked different times. The idea was he picked days that were similar, same season, same stuff like that. So like you're obviously not going to compare weekend access to like fucking Tuesday. People work during the middle of the week, but the parks are full on the weekends. So like just assume that these results are paired by day of the week, time of the week, sunshine levels, shit like that. All right, you're gonna be writing that down for a while. I'm gonna load that data into StatCrunch.
Is that the second to last? Is it 57.1 or 51?
Where?
Second to last one on left.
57.1. No napping. I get fucking jelly. Because he closed his eyes and left him closed, he wasn't blinking. He's fucking, alright, John Luke is done. Alright, so. These are paired up. I didn't list them the days and the times of the week, but they're paired. Left to right, they're paired like this. So he wants to know if the new loading procedure speeds up the line. How would that reflect in the before and after? After should be less than before, right? That makes sense to me. This is probably one of the few times that I'm okay with the less than symbol. I hate the less than symbol when I do these, but after being less than before makes sense. It takes less time, so it should be shorter. So we can call, if we do subtract the before over, if I do after minus before equals 0, and I call this group 1 and group 2, now I've got a way of labeling them. I'm going to do after is group 1, before is group 2, and that way mu d equals 0, and mu d is less than 0 for the inequality one, just by subtracting it over to the left.
Mu, the one above mu d would.
These are both d's.
Okay.
It's the same symbol. It's the one they use in the fucking program. It's annoying. What they're doing is part of it is they're taking each line, subtracting it, and now you've got a difference, and they're doing the difference on the means and stuff like that. But that's now that I've labeled my groups, that's step 1. Step 2, I don't see an alpha listed, so alpha is going to be 0.05. And we're going to use stats, t-stats. Since this data is matched up by day and time, this is paired.
StatCrunch, we do these?
Yeah. NSC, there we go. What annoying. You know, like when you see like the iceberg and like all of a sudden the shelf like falls off, there's that fucking, it feels like that. And I don't feel it very often, but like, I don't feel like, even when I brush my tongue on or anything like that, I don't feel it at all. But I do notice every once in a while my fucking cheek is irritated a little bit on the inside. So it's fucking bothering me.
Irritating, yeah.
And the only reason I'm aware of it is because I put my finger in my mouth and fucking thought I had like a piece of meat or some shit in there. All right, let's take a look on StatCrunch. I've entered it in. When I entered it, it was listed all horizontally, so I had to transpose it. And I put the 11.6 and 10.7 that's in the top row up here. So I put it on the bottom, but they're all still matched up. We're gonna go stats, t-stats, paired. We chose after to be group 1 and before to be group 2, and that way we could say less than. If you said before minus after, we'd have to do greater than. So again, order matters here. And I get a t-stat of negative 1.22. And a p-value of 0.1286. And I'm going to compare that to alpha equals 0.05. All right, so what should I do?
P-value is greater than 0.05.
And what does that mean?
That means not too low, don't reject don't support.
Not too low. Do not reject. Do not support HA. What was HA here? HA was that the after time was less than the before. So the procedure didn't work or didn't show anything. There is not enough evidence to support that the change in procedures reduce the wait time. This is one of those examples where if I tried to jack up the sends up here, it's gonna look funny. Like this is the line we're referring to. A new loading unloading procedure speeds up the line. Actually, we could put it there. There is not enough evidence to support the claim that the new loading unloading procedure speeds up the line. We could have jacked it. I just wouldn't have added the to see part. Does that make sense, Gianluca?
I'm still writing it down.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'll let you absorb it first and then I'll ask you. That's for you, Yvette. You look like you like that one. As a bubbler. You know, my friends bought me a deck of cards. It was called the Fart Deck, and each card had a different type of fart name. It was a different name for them all. So they had some weird fucking names.
What?
Some of them are good. All right, does that make sense, Gianluca?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's look at another example. Professor Jones, that's me. If you guys don't know which one we're talking about, this is me. Professor Jones believes that spending the first week of class discussing study skills, time management, mindsets, etc. increases the average final grade. Final score. He implemented this process in the spring of 2019 and compared it with the results of fall of 2018. You can find the data set in StatCrunch. Under comparing grades Jones-Hefe. That's where I labeled it. That way there was no one that's gonna go, nope, that was my data. Let's test his claim at alpha equals 0.05. I'll show you how to find this later on, so like you can see how, this is a good way to play around with it. You can look up other data sets and shit like this. I tried looking up ones to use for examples, like on finals and shit. And like, another, like the data set never is labeled well enough that I know what's going on. All right. So, you guys ready? You're never gonna have time to look at your phone, John-Luc. I'm always waiting to see when you're done. So this is how, if you want to go look this up yourself, you can. I'm gonna click on StatCrunch in my math lab, and I'm gonna visit the StatCrunch website. And you can look up data sets down here. You can click on data sets. You can type in comparing grades Jones-Hefe. You'll see my email, you know it's me. And I've got it listed as spring 19 total versus fall 18 total. Now, these are the same subject. I think it was Algebra 2. We don't even teach it anymore. It's like state fucking banned it. Don't get me started on that. But if we look at the total, I can see that the spring total had less students than the fall total. And in all reality, is there any possible way I could ever pair these students from different classes over different semesters? Not really. This is not realistic. This is an unpaired one. So this is one of the regular two means tests. So we have spring 19 data and fall 2018 data. I want you to see what it looks like so that when we're reasoning out the next steps, we can decide what we're doing. So we have spring 19 data and fall 2018 data. And these are average scores at the end of the semester, not like final exam scores, but overall final scores. Spring 19 had the new process. We didn't do math for a week. You guys still see this in your the assignment for day one with the Canvas. Like watch this, do that, the whole watch this video on time what was her name? Laura Vandekam. There's a bunch of shit you had to do the first day.
On the TED Talk.
What?
The TED Talk?
The TED Talk, yeah. That stuff that normally it takes a week to do in like a regular, like something like that. We do it in class. So that's the new process. This was without it. So if I think the final grades were improved by the process, what kind of connection should I make between spring 19 and fall 18? Spring is greater than fall, right? Spring grades, I'll put that. Spring grades are greater than fall grades. That's probably a little more helpful. Remind me later on what HA is.
We're not using MD.
What?
We're not using MD
It's mu D.
or MUD.
No. So this will be group 1. This will be group 2. And if I subtract it over to the left, I have spring minus fall is greater than 0. That'll be HA. H naught, and when I say that, I mean the mu of spring minus the mu of, let me make this where there's more room. Mu of spring minus mu of fall is greater than 0. That's me translating this line down here to our math talk. That's HA, which means H naught has to be the equal one. A lot of times I think writing HA helps guide me in my process and going, what does H naught got to be? And by that time, I've already written down, it doesn't really matter what order you have it on the paper, as long as you label it. I put spring and fall. Alternatively, since I've labeled them up here, I could use mu1 minus mu2 because I've labeled them 1 and 2 up here. This is the solid way to go, like on a final, if you've got like 2 groups and just doing a little subscript of what the name of the group is. That way there's no confusion on what group 1 is, group 2 is, stuff like that. So I've got this is step 1. What's step 2?
The alpha.
Alpha. Alpha is 0.05. It's given to us. Now we need a test stat and a p-value. And I'm sure I'm going to have to write my concluding statement on the next page. But we can get what we need here. When you guys are ready, I'll switch over to the camera. Does anyone want more examples after this one?
Have we pretty much covered like?
We've covered every topic.
Yeah.
All right. Here we have data. I'll show you what it looks like when we don't have data. It'll look familiar. It'll be like, oh yeah, that tracks. So we're gonna do stats, t-stats, to sample with data. Let me show you with summary real quick, so it's not in the way later. You gotta remember when we did one sample, we had to put the mean, the standard deviation, the sample size. Now we've got 2 groups and we gotta list both. This happens with the proportion too. If you do stats, proportion stats to sample with data, or sorry, with summary. We did this earlier, didn't we? The example we did already had it, never mind. Let's go to doing this one. We've got with data. So how did I label it? I said spring is group 1 and fall is group 2. This thing here, this pool variances, The idea of the pool variances is when the standard deviation and the variance is the same for both groups. There's no reason to ever really assume that. Don't click it. Like this is for when they know it should be the same. We don't need it. We're gonna leave it alone. We come down to our hypothesis, mu1 minus mu2 was 0, and we went with greater than. Spring was greater than fall. And I click compute. I get a t-stat of 2.01. I get a p-value of 0.0237. And in the sample difference, we don't need it, but I'm going to point out what it means. The sample difference here says 10.69 or 10.7. I'll reference the sample difference in a second. We're going to just finish the test first. Where's my other pins? Where's my fucking blue pin? Oh my God.
Right. You dropped it on your plate. Look at your phone.
I'm crazy when my pins disappear. Can't handle it. All right, so what am I doing now? I got my test stat and my p-value. What do I do? Compare p-value to alpha, right? Is it less than or greater than? It's less than, right?
What's that?
So what does that mean?
Too low, reject HO.
Too low, reject the hoe, get out, hoe! Don't be mean to the hoe, even when you reject her. Reject the hoe, support HA. And HA was spring grades were greater than fall grades. That's what we had up here. So when I'm writing the sentence, I'm going to come up here and hijack what Mr. Jones believed. There is sufficient evidence to support the claim that, and I can literally, if you want to copy down the whole goddamn thing, it's a lot of copying, but I'm going to do it because John Luca likes it. Spending the first week of class discussing, God damn it, misspelled. Discussing study skills, time management, mindsets, etc. Increases the average score, final score. At alpha equals 0.05 level of significance. Oh yeah. Probably one of those days is not gonna be a fart. You do it enough, it happens. You just hope to fucking God you're at home. I ain't gonna lie, it's happened to me, but it's always been at home. It's always been at home where I can fucking hop in the shower and fucking be like, God damn it, David.
Setting yourself up for failure.
What?
You said you're setting yourself up for failure.
So every time that's what my wife should point out. She really wants me to stop farting in public. Every time you do it, you risk shitting yourself, sharding, right? That's what they call it, sharding.
Yeah.
That's probably what she's really worried about. It happened.
That's not a pleasant thing. If you, I doubt most people won't ever admit to it. I don't give a fuck. If it's happened to you, you know how. Like even if you're fucking 5 feet from the toilet, you're like, motherfuck! I gotta fucking take a shower and change, like maybe burn those underwear. Did this whole thing make sense, John Luca?
Yeah.
All right. So what does that sample difference mean? The sample difference of 10.7 means the average grade in spring was 10.7 points higher than the average grade in fall. That's a fucking full letter grade.
That's crazy.
Full letter grade. We can look at what the scores were. Stats, summary, stats, columns. We can just look at the mean. The spring scores were average of 65. The fall scores were an average of 54. Now, the average is not passing in either case, but 10 points higher means more people passed. And not only more people passed, but the ones that passed got better grades too. So this is why there's all that fucking Canvas. You're like, God damn, there's a lot of stupid fucking non-math assignments. That's why. If students that take it seriously, and some do, they're like, I still need to fucking go through and read everyone's introduction. I skimmed them for names. I saw some of them, I really need to read them. Because I don't have that many students that I need to make sure, like, I know what's going on. Because I'm pretty sure some of you guys are gonna email me in the future. Go, Jones, fucking really love your class this summer. Would you mind writing me a letter of recommendation? I mean, like, who the fuck are you? John Luca? I don't recognize that name. That's a lie. I don't, you're the only John Luca I've ever fucking had.
You're like turkey bacon.
I know.
Right? It's fucking turkey bacon. Oh, hey, BTS, what's up?
Wow. I'd rather prefer Deck than just BTS.
You don't look like BTS now, but yeah. Well, you don't like BTS? They got some good songs.
I think a majority of this class is high school students. Everybody over here.
How old? BTS isn't that fucking old.
No.
No,
Yeah.
but that was just something random that I just noticed. About half.
Yeah. Some of us are older than the average high school student. Ain't nothing wrong with that. In fact, get this. We're done with lecture. So, the true story, students that are fucking older than 25 at community college are almost always superior students. Almost always. The only time it's the rare exception is like when they're too old, and like even though you know they fucking use computers for a living, like they work in an office, they still don't know how to fucking use a computer. Every other fucking adult that's like over 25 has had a real job and is here because they don't want to do that job anymore, or they want a big promotion so they make a lot more money. They know why they're here, they work their ass off whether they like the class or not. Right? That's how I was. I took fucking art class serious. I took music appreciation fucking serious.
Yeah, you need it, it's like you get that degree.
You gotta get the degree. I took it serious, I wanted an A. It paid off, I got serious scholarships.
Wait, you took music appreciation?
I took music appreciation here, yeah.
Was it because you only take it if you haven't done like a band or anything.
Do I look like I fucking play a musical instrument?
Well,
Other
no,
than
I mean,
my,
like,
I play the ass trombone pretty well.
I mean, like,
But
do you
they
have to
don't
take
let
a
me do
class,
that.
or do you only take it if you haven't, like,
It meets the music, it met one of their criteria.
okay.
But there was a lot of songs that I really like fucking loved. I still listen to them today. I would never have heard them
No, there's some like Italian songs I still listen to,